Alright, so let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens, who are fresh off a run to the Stanley Cup finals this past season. In this season preview for the Habs, I'm going to be talking about their roster, putting some line combinations together, and I'm also going to give a playoff prediction for them as well. And I know you're probably thinking, well, do I even have to give a playoff prediction for them? They should be a lock to make the playoffs because they went to the finals last year, right? Well, hold on a little bit. That run to the finals was a bit of a surprise, and I don't think it's a guarantee that Montreal makes the playoffs again this year. Right, so the first line I have Toffoli, Suzuki, and Carfield. Those three played together a lot in the playoffs, especially Suzuki and Carfield. The team in Montreal, who's been much maligned for their lack of center depth, I think that's starting to change now, or at least it is at the number one center position. I think Nick Suzuki, well, he's not quite there yet. I think he can be that number one guy. Is he going to be an elite number one guy like a Crosby or an Austin Matthews or a McDavid or someone like that? No, obviously not. That's a very tall order to ask him to be that good. But I think he can be a very adequate number one center for Montreal going forward. And Cole Caulfield's a very intriguing guy for me because I've heard a lot of numbers thrown around of what his goals can be when he hits his peak. I've heard like 35 to 50 goals. I don't know if he's going to be a 50 goal guy. I think minimum a 30 goal guy. The way he shoots the puck, it's hard, it's accurate. He has a true goal scorer's release, and that's what you like to see out of a guy who has that type of potential, or at least who is said to have that type of potential anyways. Now, the knock on Cole Caulfield's been his size, because some people still believe the NHL is a big man's game, and I guess it is to a certain extent, considering there aren't a lot of guys that are the size of Cole Caulfield. But with that being said, I still think the league is more geared towards speed and skill, and that should really benefit Carfield too. On the second line, I have Mike Hoffman, the new addition that the Habs brought in through free agency, with Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Brendan Gallagher as well. And you're probably thinking, so Jonathan Drewen's not going to play in the top six. Well, let me say this. Mike Hoffman was not brought in here to play in the bottom six. When he's in the bottom six, he's nowhere near as effective as he is when he's in the top six. He seems to lose interest when he's further down the lineup. He doesn't do his best work only playing 11 to 14 minutes a night. He does his best work when he's playing 15 or 16 plus minutes a night. And Mike Hoffman was not brought in here to be a defensive stalwart. He's not going to wow you defensively. He might even frustrate you defensively at times, but he was brought in here to do one thing and one thing only, and that's scoring goals. On the third line, I got Jonathan Drewen, Jake Evans, and Josh Anderson playing together. And a lot of people said that Montreal only made the playoffs last year because of the North Division, and I think that is true to a certain extent. But one thing I noticed when I was putting this list together is like, wow, the Habs actually have some pretty good depth up and down their lineup. Third line of Drewen, Evans, and Anderson is probably going to be better than most third lines in the NHL. And the depth for the Habs stays very strong on the fourth line, as I have Arturi Lehkonen, Cedric Paquette, who they brought in through free agency, and Yoel Armia playing together. Again, much like Montreal's third line, I think their fourth line is going to be better than most other fourth lines in the league. So let's switch to defense now. On the first pairing, I have Joel Edmondson and Jeff Petrie playing together. Edmondson was a rock in the playoffs last season, as well as Petrie when he was healthy and in the lineup. I also have Ben Sherrod and the new acquisition David Savard playing together, and also Alexander Romanov and Chris Weidman, the guy they brought in from Europe, playing together on the third pairing. And I have Brett Kulak here as an extra, but him and Weidman, they really could be in and out of the lineup together. Who knows, maybe Weidman doesn't even make the team out of camp. I think he more than likely does. I probably think he also stays the whole year as well, just because Weidman is a good puck mover. He's a very good modern day type of defenseman. That's what I wanted to say. Good modern day type of defenseman Weidman is. And he's not the biggest guy in the world at only 5'10". He's going to move pucks well for Montreal and get their transition game going north. In goal, we have, as you know, Carey Price and Jake Allen. Not much to be said here. Carey Price, one of the best goalies in the league. Jake Allen also proved to be a very solid backup this past season. Extras at forward, I have Matthew Perreault, Paul Byron, who's on injury reserve right now. Who knows, Byron might even be a full-time guy in the lineup again, as he was pretty solid for the Habs in their playoff run as well. And I also have Ryan Poehling, the youngster, too, as an extra. Poehling, much like Byron, could also very well be a full-time guy in the Habs lineup as well this year. Now for Montreal, they look like a pretty strong team on paper, right? But I do have one area of concern for them, and that would be in the coaching position. And you're probably thinking, really, do you have concern about Dom Ducharme's coaching ability? He brought this team to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. Why would anyone be concerned about his ability to coach? With Ducharme, I'm not a big fan of some of the systems he employs for his team. They've become a real transition-only team. If you look at the majority of the goals the Habs scored in the playoffs, a lot of it's off the rush. There isn't a ton of cycle play. And you want to utilize more of this talent with playing in the offensive zone, hanging on to pucks, wearing teams out, dipping and diving in the offensive zone, creating confusion in the offensive zone, and getting your offense that way as well. Not just relying on the rush. And for Montreal to make the playoffs, you don't want Carey Price to have to be out of this world type of good for them to do it. You want him to just be very good, not out of this world type of good. The team has to help them maybe a little more than they did last year. Before I do a prediction, I want to circle back on a couple players here. First of all, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, he has to be more consistent. He's been a little bit lackluster his first few years in the league. He had a pretty good playoffs though, but he's got to show that he can do it full time to become a legit top 6 center in this league. And with Jonathan Drewen, this guy was brought in 4 years ago on a 6-year deal, and it was such a great story. He was the French-Canadian kid coming back to Montreal. There was a lot of excitement around that, but he's been pretty disappointed in Montreal, or has he? Is Jonathan Drewen more of just a 45 to 55 point guy? Maybe that's just who he is in the NHL, and everyone's just expecting a lot more out of him than who he really is. But when I've seen Jonathan Drewen play in games where he's really on, he easily looks like he could be a 65 plus point guy. He's got great hands, great skating ability, a hard, accurate shot as well. And I think that's what leaves Montreal Canadiens fans wanting more out of this guy. And now for a playoff prediction. With the Habs, I honestly could see it going either way. Them just missing the playoffs by a little bit, or them getting into the playoffs being a wild card. I don't know that they get top 3 in that Atlantic division. I think if they do get in, it's probably at 4, maybe even 5 if 5 Atlantic teams crack the top 8 in the Eastern Conference this year. Despite them having a very strong roster, I'm just not totally sold on the coaching of Dom Ducharme, and coaching makes a much bigger difference than you might think it does. When teams would fire their coaches back then, I'd always think, oh, it's the players. But as I got to look at more hockey systems and stuff like that and analyze it better, coaching really does make a huge difference. I'm not 100% sold on Dom Ducharme yet anyway, so that's why I could see the Habs either just missing the playoffs by a little bit or getting into the playoffs as a wild card. If they had a coach that I was more sold on, I would easily put them in the playoffs for sure. There it is, a season preview for the Montreal Canadiens. Please let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.